Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to have a quick chat with you all about the indictment of former President Donald Trump. Now, as far as the facts of the case are concerned, we basically only know that he has been indicted. There has been some reporting that he's facing about 30 counts of an unknown nature, but to me that's all pretty speculative right now, so I can't really comment on any of the actual facts of the case or where it might go. However, what I do want to talk about is how people have been reacting to the indictment. Because I think that there are people on both sides of the aisle who are overreacting based on the facts we know and kind of taking a best or worst case scenario view of things depending on where you stand. So, let's break down the different ways people have been reacting to the indictment and see how they square up with reality. Now, obviously, the big headline that everyone is reacting to, regardless of political affiliation, is that this is the first time that a former president has been indicted, and that's true. However, it's not the first time that we've thought about indicting a former president. In the aftermath of the Watergate incidents, Richard Nixon was very likely to be indicted after his resignation because people thought that it was very important that it be shown that no one is above the law. However, Nixon was pardoned by Gerald Ford, and when anyone gets a pardon, they legally admit that they are guilty of the crime they are being pardoned for, and they gain the benefit that they cannot be punished for the crime that they just admitted they were guilty of. So, there was nothing the Justice Department could do to Nixon, and therefore it didn't really make any sense to indict him. Additionally, Bill Clinton was almost indicted on the perjury charge that was the center of the Monica Lewinsky scandal. However, Bill Clinton reached an agreement with the prosecutor that he would surrender his law license for 5 years, and that then the prosecutor would not indict him, and therefore, again, there was no indictment. So, while yes, this is the first time in U.S. history that we have actually indicted a former president, the idea of indicting a former president is not nearly as novel as some people would like you to think it is. Now let's get into some more partisan reactions, and we're going to start off with the Republican Party, who has given us a masterclass in overreacting, calling this indictment the end of democracy, the grossest abuse of prosecutorial power in the history of the world, a direct attack on our electoral integrity, and a whole bunch of other things. At the core of all of these arguments is the idea that this case is being brought with a political motivation to hurt Donald Trump's chances of winning in 2024, and that there isn't really any substance to the case. So let's indulge that idea and play through it a little bit and see how Alvin Bragg might have thought about the case if he's going to bring this indictment. Now, whenever we're thinking about political decisions, we have to remember that the end goal is to win elections. So, if Bragg is making this as a political decision, he has to know what the consequences of bringing an indictment is. And there's one thing that Donald Trump always does when he finds himself in trouble. He fundraises. He did it after both impeachments, he did it after the search warrant was served on his Mar-a-Lago estate, and he's done it in the wake of this indictment. So you know, politically speaking, that any time you indict, investigate, search, or otherwise cause legal trouble for Trump, he's going to fundraise. So, electorally, that's a bad move because you're just putting a ton of money in his pocket that otherwise wouldn't be there. As we all know, money is very important to getting your message out there and eventually winning elections. But even more importantly than that, if there is no there, like Republicans are saying, and this case won't hold up in court, that's handing Trump an easy win and feeding into his narrative that these cases against him are unjust and that there's not substantial and that the Democrats are actually weaponizing the U.S. justice system. And that's actually something that might shift moderate and independent voters away from the Democratic Party and into whoever the Republicans' eventual nominee is in 2024. So, if you're sitting there trying to make this as a political decision, Alvin Bragg wouldn't have indicted at all, because both of those things carry a lot of electoral risk for the Democratic Party. However, if he actually thinks he's got an ironclad case and is making this not as a political decision but as a prosecutorial decision, he's going to ignore those two major political risks and take this case to trial. Now, despite the fact that, yes, Alvin Bragg is probably pretty confident in his case, a lot of people on the left are giving me very 2003 George Bush vibes with the whole mission accomplished attitude. We got him, folks. And that's simply not the case. An indictment is simply a grand jury agreeing with the prosecutor that there is some likelihood that there is a crime that has been committed and that should be brought to trial. And that's all that is. There's still going to be a trial where Alvin Bragg is going to have to prove that Trump is guilty, as, again, in the U.S. system of justice, we assume that people are innocent until they're proven guilty, and Donald Trump will have a chance to defend himself, which he has not had so far in the grand jury process. So, we're going to have to wait and see how things turn out. Additionally, yes, over the course of the trial, depending on how things go, it could galvanize some of Trump's most diehard supporters to turn out the vote, to get more involved, to give him a lot of money that he can then use for his campaigns. And it can rally Republicans around him to support him in a way that it has during both of his impeachments as well as the aftermath of the search at Mar-a-Lago. So this is not nearly over, and quite frankly, this indictment is not even the most serious of the 3 or 4 investigations that Donald Trump is currently facing. So let's not get too overexcited over the fact that Donald Trump is facing one indictment for what are, at the end of the day, paper crimes. Now, paper crimes aren't nothing. As we know, Capone went to jail for tax evasion, but I think I'm more interested in watching the investigations going on in Fulton County, Georgia, and with the special counsel, because those are charges that might actually hurt Donald Trump's political future, as paper crimes like what we're seeing in New York, I don't think that's really going to change the minds of any voters, because at the end of the day, this is all about payments to a porn star. So, yeah, I think most people have their opinion of Trump on that fact, and whether he goes and faces penalties for this isn't really going to impact their views of him politically. So, is this going to have that huge impact and knock Trump out of the political scene? No. Speaking of elections, I would like to remind everyone that Donald Trump is not actually running for president. He is running to be the Republican nominee for president, and that is an important distinction. There are no ethical requirements for state or federal prosecutors that would prohibit them from indicting a primary candidate, as primary elections don't put people in office. It simply gives you the privilege of running as the nominee of a major party during the general election, which generally helps with things like ballot access. So, this really isn't going to have any direct impact on an election that is over a year away. But I think it might actually help Republican primary voters, as they're going to get the chance to decide how this might impact Trump's electability and whether they want him to be the nominee in the first place. I think it would be a lot more problematic for Republicans if he didn't get indicted until after the primary, as at that point they're kind of stuck with him. And that might actually be a lot more impactful for the Republicans' chances of winning the presidency in 2024. So, overall, it's probably better for Republicans that he get indicted now, and they have a chance to switch over to someone like Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or whoever else decides to get in the race, as opposed to, yeah, Trump's our man, and he's indicted and going to trial in the middle of an actual presidential campaign, which that would certainly complicate the whole campaign process and really, I think, limit their chances of winning in 2024. Overall, I think everyone is just getting a little bit too far ahead of the facts. And I get it. This is certainly a novel situation, and a lot of different people have very strong feelings about it. However, at its core, this is a fairly straightforward legal process. An indictment has been issued, there will be a trial, the DA will bring his evidence, Trump will defend himself against that evidence, and at the end of the day, a jury will decide. If the jury decides that Trump is guilty, he's guilty. If they decide he's innocent, he's innocent. Because when it comes to criminal matters in the U.S., we do our best to resolve these things in a court of law, rather than the court of public opinion. Think about it.